Good morning, everyone. It's Craig Studnicky from ISG and Related ISG, talking to you from Aventura, Florida today on February 16th. First of all, I want to wish everybody a happy belated Valentine's Day. And hopefully I have some good Valentine's Day data to share with all of you. Today we're presenting the Q4 Miami report, or basically let's call it the results of 2022. Indeed, another unique year. You know, when I think about 22, I can divide it into two parts. First half was exactly like 2021, which I have affectionately referred to as a video game. There was a lot of money in the world. There was a lot of real estate being sold everywhere, not just in South Florida. Do I think it was real? No. That's why I call it a video game. First half of last year looked a lot like all of 2021. Interest rates were still low. The economy was booming. Chairman Powell, a very well-known name now in the world, really got serious about fighting inflation in the middle of last year, and his tactics, his strategy of raising interest rates to combat inflation, on one hand, it seems to be working. On the other hand, it caused two consecutive business quarters last year, Q2 and Q3, into negative GDP in the United States, which is the technical definition of a recession. Combined with that, we had mortgage rates go up. Mortgage rates in 2021 were 3.5% to 4%, and by summer last year they hit 7%, so that's double. And oh my God, the results were everything's going to stop, the economy's in a recession. What are we going to do? There were some headlines that appeared that furthered that hysteria. Let me read some of them to you. From the Miami Herald, just this past January. What happened to the home buying rush? South Florida home sales have plunged in latter part of 2022. South Florida Business Journal in December writes, South Florida's home sales drop by more than by 1/3 in November. And Forbes in December asked the question, is the real estate market slowing down? It was more of a national question, but nevertheless the question was asked. So, you know, I do understand that. I understand what everyone was feeling, especially in the second half of 2022. Second half of 2022 is quite different than the first half. First half looked just like 2021. I understand the mindset. I understand the concerns, the worries. Except what I have learned is that South Florida, when I compare our data to the rest of the United States, we are truly in some kind of a protective dome, a protective kind of bubble, if you will. And it's mostly driven by, in my opinion, Mayor Francis Suarez. The effort that he put in 2020 to convince all of these companies to move to South Florida, and in fact they're moving, has made conditions, economic conditions and real estate conditions in South Florida truly different from the rest of the country. I even asked Mayor Suarez in my last Miami report, Mayor Suarez, if there's such a thing as a city, you know, that could be recession-proof, could it be Miami? His answer was yes. He gave a lot of wonderful information to back up his yes. And it turns out, I think he's right. Let me give you an example on this next slide, which I found very interesting. The rolling average of real estate transactions in 2018, 19, and 20, the rolling average was about 40 billion. That's houses and condos combined, Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. 40 billion. I'm rounding just to give you an idea. You know, in 2021, the video game, it went from 40 to 66 billion. There was a lot of real estate being sold in 2021. But then we hit 2022, the year of the recession, the year of high mortgage rates, the year of it's the housing market slowing down. We went from 66 billion in 2021 to 78 billion plus last year. 78 billion. When I tell you that South Florida seems to be immune, seems to be somewhat recession-proof to the conditions around the United States, that's why. People continue to move here. Mostly now Americans, as we've touched on before. And they are not slowing down the velocity of sales, notwithstanding what may have happened with mortgage rates, what may have happened even with interest rates going up and slowing down the economy because Chairman Powell of the Fed wants to combat inflation. It looks like he's got inflation by the ankles. It looks like it, meaning he's got a strategy that seems to be working, but it's affecting the rest of the United States. Real estate prices are experiencing, I'll call it a price adjustment this way, in most of the US, particularly commercial, not South Florida. More examples. In 2019 and 20, look at the amount of inventory that we had for sale. And this is January of 20. In January 20, the world was still a normal place. We weren't concerned about what was coming in February, March, and April because we didn't know what was coming in February, March, and April of 2020. But when you look at the inventory of houses and condos combined, 45,000. Previous year, 42,000. Well, by January 2021, because of the conditions that happened in 20, a lot of New Yorkers and California people coming to South Florida, it dropped from 45,000 to close to 30. That's a big drop in 1 year. But the following year, January of 2022, was kind of scary. It really was. Last year, we had just under 15,000 houses and condos combined in South Florida. Folks, that's no inventory. That's no inventory, because when you take 15,000 houses and condos combined, divided by county, and then Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, and then town by town by town by town, that's no inventory. Fortunately, increased by about 40% from January 21 to right now. Now we've got just under 23,000 houses and condos combined. Whew. Exhale. We've got inventory to sell. We need this inventory because of the population gains that we continue to receive, enjoy, whatever the right word is, here in Florida, particularly South Florida. Take a look at this next slide. So I just showed you that, for example, in January of 20, there were close to 45,000 housing units for sale, houses and condos combined. But what's interesting is it was dominated by condo inventory. Please remember, I know I've said this before, but since 2020, most Americans that are moving to South Florida, they want a house. It started off in 2020 with social distancing, but then it turned into people rediscovered the love of just living in a house versus a condo. But then there was another factor that I didn't realize until really last year. The amount of companies that have committed to moving to South Florida, combined with all the individual families that are moving to South Florida because of Tax Reform 17 from President Trump's administration, they're moving here permanently, and most of these folks wanted a house. It's either because of social distancing or because they had a family. But something I've learned from the Americans that are moving here, from all parts of the U.S., principally the Northeast, Chicago, Illinois, San Diego, California, Los Angeles, California, Sacramento, California, San Francisco, California, California. It's funny, you know, when they think about Florida and they think about Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, they think about the water. They think about palm trees. They think about attractive people. So when they come here, and they're coming here, they're moving here permanently, they're asking you, they're asking me, show me a house on the water. Well, there are no houses on the water. You know that as well as I do. So they're saying to all of us, you're not getting me off the water. It's always been my dream, my vision, my mental picture of South Florida is what I just described. So we're selling them condos. We're selling them 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms on the water. Remember, they need bedroom count because they're bringing families. They need bedroom count because I really do think remote working is here to stay in some fashion. It's not quite as extreme as it was perhaps a year ago, or certainly 2 years ago, but it remains. That's why 2 bedrooms have become so popular, even for an individual, because the second bedroom is his office. And if it's a married couple, they go for the 3 bedroom because the second bedroom is either the child's room, it's a guest room, that 3rd bedroom is the office. So consequently, we've seen a huge uptick in the demand of 2, 3, and 4 bedroom condos, particularly last year. And the water is owning it right now. Now we're noticing that the relationship between houses and condos is kind of divided 50-50. Most of the inventory that's on the water that people can buy are condos. They're not houses. Let me give you an idea of what's happened with houses. I think in my previous report I said there's really 3 types of houses. It's an A, and a B, and a C. Just trying to simplify it. The A house is something that's a house that's probably 10 to 15 years old, beautiful, probably contemporary in terms of architectural design, and it's on the water. The B house, it's just like the A, except it's not on the water. And then the C is everything else. Well, you'll see in this next slide, a year ago we had close to 460 A houses, beautiful, contemporary, relatively new houses on the water. Now we have 140. That's right, you have 140 houses between Dade, Broward, Palm Beach on the water. That's like nothing. The B houses, They've declined in inventory as well. They're just like the A's, but they're not on the water. A year ago we had 1,400, now we have 1,200. Wish we had more, but we don't. They went down. The C houses, everything else, that are priced between, say, 500,000 up to slightly over $1 million, they went up considerably. We had about 3,000 of them this time last year. Now we have close to 10,000. That's a lot. That's great news, because most of these young Americans that are moving here following these 122 companies, that fits their price range of what they can afford in a single family house. No, it's not on the water, but it's inventory. It's close to 10,000 of them. Exhale. That's a lot of relief, and we need the relief. How long is it going to last? Not very long. Not very long, because the pipeline of new construction is so thin, and people keep moving to South Florida. Condos, let me show you what happened in inventory there. So a year ago, we had close to 3,600 condos for sale. Now it doubled. Now you're close to 7,000. A year ago, 2 bedrooms, we had about 2,500 to sell. They doubled. You're close to 5,000 now. That's really good news. The 3 bedrooms, this is really sobering news. We went from having 750 3-bedroom condos, Tri-County area, Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County, a year ago. That number has dropped to just over 300. 300 3-bedroom condos in the Tri-County area. You divide, that's 100 per county. That's no inventory. If you've got a family that wants a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom and it's on the water, if it's reasonably priced, even if it's overpriced, sell it as quickly as you can. Because that market of the Americans that are moving here that want more bedrooms is ongoing. It's almost an exponential growth, which we'll touch on in a second. Here's an example, next slide, of what really happened last year. 50% of all sales in the Tri-County area, of all condo sales, were 3 and 4 bedrooms. Close to 40% were 2s, and the rest were 1s. Look what we have in inventory now. The next graph shows that we have almost 60% of the inventory, condo inventory that's in MLS right now, are 1 bedrooms. 40% 2s. Less than 3% are 3s. Again, you got a 3-bedroom listing that's reasonably priced or overpriced, sell it as quickly as you can, because overpriced is going to be underpriced sooner than later. The appreciation rates. You know, I just told you the story about how most people outside of Miami, see Fort Lauderdale, see Palm Beach, the blue turquoise waters, the pretty people, the palm trees. They want water. So the realtors are telling me, related ISG agents for sure are telling me that all my clients from the US, they want to be on the water. They want to be on the water, so I'm selling them condos. Yeah, I understand that, because that's the mindset of most Americans. That's how they want to live when they come to South Florida. Well, how has that impacted the appreciation rate of waterfront properties? Well, let's start with this. This is oceanfront. This is just Miami Beach. But I'm giving this to you as an example of what you can extrapolate for both Fort Lauderdale as well as Palm Beach. So in 2018, the average price per foot of an oceanfront condo, and this is a new oceanfront condo. These are condos that are no more than 5 years old. They were built in the last cycle. Most of them were finished in 17, 18, 19. They were trading then for $1,600. In 2018, the resales were $1,600 a foot. Today they're trading for more than double. They're $3,600 a foot. Rapid appreciation. They're driven by those Americans that are coming here in big numbers. What happened to the Bay? Kind of the same story. The Bay in 2018, we're talking about new condos directly on the Bay. We're trading for just under around $650 a foot, and today they're trading for close to $1,100 a foot. That's almost double. The Bay. It's the water. The magic of the water. The Americans that are coming here, they want to be on the water, and they're driving the prices up. When you don't have waterfront condos or houses to sell, you go to what I call mainland. Mainland is a building or a house that's basically not directly on the water. It's not directly on the bay, directly on the intracoastal or the ocean. What's happening there? Not as dramatic. The line is not quite flat, but close to flat. Now, the appreciation is the water. The Americans want the water, and they're coming in really big numbers. Now, do I think this number is going to start skewing north in 2023 for all of the mainland condos? Yes, I do. But common sense is telling me, it should be telling you, when that line on the mainland starts to go north, starts to go up, what becomes of the water? Any real estate that's available on the water today, I'm encouraging you to sell it, because you're going to have a friend for life. Any client you sell waterfront property to in South Florida, the likelihood that that buy is going to appreciate in value considerably, given all the conditions that are currently affecting South Florida, are really strong. The water. This is an example of the magic of the water. That's resales. Now let's go to new construction. This is a topic I always love. We're not really talking about condo hotels today. We're just going to stick with traditional condos. At the moment, there are about 6,600 that are being promoted throughout South Florida. Once again, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach. I have some really 6,600 in 44 buildings. I have some good news. I've been saying forever and ever that, at least throughout all of last year, most of these buildings aren't breaking ground because of the shortage of certain commodities like concrete, glass, and steel. We call those supply chain issues. It's been a real pain for developers because they never expected supply chain issues to inhibit their ability to start construction, to manufacture the product, but it did. And that was all brought because we were all in quarantine, individuals and companies in 2020, and as a result, when these companies shut down manufacturing, things like steel and glass and concrete, it created supply chain stuff. It's getting leveled out. That's the good news. 12 of these 44 condos right now are under construction in Miami. That means that, and Fort Lauderdale, that means that supply chain issues are in fact starting to level out. Most developers believe that all supply chain issues will be at a new normal next year. And that probably means that by the fall, by the third quarter of this year, by the fourth quarter, you'll start to see evidence of that already. What's interesting about the 12 that are under construction, 10 of the 12 are under 30 stories. That's very telling. See, under 30 stories, there's enough supply, there's enough commodities, concrete, glass, steel, drywall, etc., to build those buildings. It wasn't possible a year ago. It is now. There is a clearing through the trees. We are going to be hitting a new normal, and I expect all of these condos will be under construction, if not by the end of this year, certainly next year. Whew. So all of you have been concerned about whether or not any of these buildings are ever going to get built. They're going to get built. The whole world is trying to reform into this new normal groove, this new normal lane, and we're getting there. We are getting there. The timeline, well, once these projects do break ground, then you've got to add 4, 5, or 6 years, depending on the height of the building, as to when those projects will get delivered. That puts a lot of pressure on existing inventory that you find in MLS. In other words, the good news is supply chain issues are getting resolved. Developers are going to be able to close on construction loans, probably the second half of this year and certainly all throughout next year. But the units that are going to get built, the other 5,400 units that are going to start construction, if it takes 4, 5, or 6 years, and Americans keep moving here, together with the Latin American demand, the only place people can buy a house or a condo that they can move into right away is MLS, resale inventory. That's it. So I have been saying, and I'm sure you're agreeing with me then, more than likely you can expect residential prices to continue to rise, particularly if it's on the water, because we only have so much inventory. We're only going to have so much inventory for the next 4, 5, 6 years. And the inventory that's even going to be started is not enough. What do I mean? I think I've covered this before, but it may mean something more now. In the 2000s, from 2001 to 2007, there were 58,000 condos that got built in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. That's way too many, but that's how many got built. In the last cycle, it was close to 20,000, from 2012 right through 2019. Now we're building 6,600. Not nearly enough. We probably need close to 20, 30,000 in the supply pipeline just to accommodate continued demand. But that's not what's in the pipeline. And now that the pipeline or the supply chain issue is getting resolved, they can't get delivered until the second half of this decade. We're talking about 2027, 2028, 2029. So what becomes of the value of existing inventory if the population of South Florida maintains its current demand curve? You know, when I filmed the Q3 report with Mayor Suarez, I said, you know, there are some demographers, experts on population shifts, that are forecasting that Florida might pass Texas as the fastest growing state in the country in 2 or 3 years. I said this in October. Well, here it is, February the 16th, I didn't realize that while I was interviewing Mayor Suarez, it was happening right under our nose. Florida passed Texas last year. Look at this, just little history, if I may, because I find it kind of interesting. I hope you do too. 10 years ago, California was the fastest growing state in the US, followed by Texas, followed by Florida, the big three. 5 years ago, Texas and Florida passed California. That was kind of a big deal. There's 40 million people that live in California. There's 30 million people that live in Texas. We're like 21 million people in Florida. So for us to maintain, to stay in step with those two big giant states is a big deal. What I didn't know is what was coming because of Tax Reform 17 and because of the higher income taxes that are being imposed on residents of both California and New York. California, which was the #1 fastest growing state in the country forever, last year was not. Florida passed Texas last year. We're now the fastest growing state in the country. Texas is #2. California went to number 50. We went from 1 to 50. They lost, according to the US Census Bureau, 940 people every day last year. Again, what's the math? The US Census adds births, they subtract deaths, they add people moving in, they subtract people moving out, and that equals X. And X for California last year was minus 940 people a day. It made them 50 out of 50 states. 50 out of 50 states. What's 49? New York. They lost 820 people a day. I think I can safely tell you that probably 70% of New Yorkers find their way to Florida. Where in Florida, I don't know, but I mean, we know a lot of them come to Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach, but they're going all over Florida. There's Naples, there's Tampa, there's Orlando, there's Jacksonville. California, I used to sell at Related ISG, we'd sell 1 Californian a month prior to 2020. In 2021, I think we were selling 2 a month. Last year, we were selling almost 2 a week. It's getting very busy from California. I think our climate very much mimics Southern California. And the high-tech business that's moving to South Florida from California, trust me, it's in momentum. Don't let anybody tell you differently. It's in momentum. And a lot of these young folks that are coming here from California are those techies. And clearly they're influencing the buying patterns everywhere. This next slide shows what this new buying profile has done to South Florida. I've had ISG for 30 years. I've had Related ISG for 13. Prior to, well, 10 years ago, look at this. Almost half our sales in the Tri-County area came from Latin America. 21% US and others like Canada. It's 10 years later and everything has gone completely flipped. Now half the sales in the Tri-County area are US. When you get to Broward County, you get to Palm Beach County, much more American. But look at this, they keep coming. Florida is now the fastest growing state in the 3rd fastest growing country in the world. Last year, the fastest growing country in the world was India. They took China's place. China's #2. China was #1 forever, now they're #2. The 3rd fastest growing country in the world is the United States. So we are all selling real estate in the fastest growing state, in the 3rd fastest growing country in the world. We have a demand. We have Mayor Francis Suarez. We have 122 companies from the US starting. I mean, you know there's more coming that are relocating either corporate offices, world headquarters, or regional offices here in South Florida. And they're on their way. About 15, 16 are here. The rest of them, as I've said, are packing. Some of you have asked me, Craig, this all sounds great, but how sustainable is this? My Related ISG agents ask me this all the time. A friend of mine from Swire Properties, Brickell City Center people, and the Brickell Key people, sent me this following graph a couple weeks ago. And honestly, this was a jaw dropper. How sustainable is all of this? For the first time ever, according to the US Labor Department, there are more people working in the state of Florida than the entire state of New York. A lot of you saw this graph posted on the Related ISG social media pages, and some of you took it, and some of you are posting it as your own. That's okay. This is a major fact that very much goes to the sustainability of this new Florida economy. It's dominated by the Americans. It's dominated by these companies that are relocating here, and Americans are moving here. We're not just in momentum. I think you're in exponential momentum. Assuming this all just maintains itself, if we maintain the same pace as 2022 in terms of the population growth domestically, Add that to the flight capital that's coming out of Latin America today, which we're all familiar with because all of Latin America is so politically far to the left. It's not socialistic necessarily, it's even left of that. Add Latin American demand to this extraordinary US demand. I think that we should, A, be grateful that we're all living in South Florida, B, be extremely thankful to Mayor Francis Suarez, and C, don't misunderstand all this good news because construction is starting. Mortgage rates are probably going to go down by come summer. That seems to be the collective wisdom out there. But we're still in supply shock. We barely have enough supply to satisfy the continued demand, mostly from US. This is not a time to rest. This is a time to get on your toes. And if nothing else, sell as much waterfront as you can because the waterfront inventory is disappearing. The stuff that we have in the pipeline is great. We need more of it. And we're just going to have to be patient because it's going to take these developers years to finish construction of these magnificent buildings that are being sold all over South Florida. Anyway, that is our Q4 update, the recap, if you will, of 2022. In April, just a couple of months from now, we're going to have a live event like we had last year. Last year at this time, we had a live event at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel on Brickell Key with Mayor Francis Suarez. Well, we're doing the same thing in April this year. A live event with Mayor Suarez. A Q&A with Craig asking the mayor, what's coming to Miami that we don't know about, sir? And I know you all enjoy listening to him. God knows I do. I'm going to ask him that question and a couple of others. I'm going to sit back and relax because Mayor Suarez is going to give all of us our sales brochure for 2023. Until April, I wish you all well. Good luck, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.